Welcome back, everybody. Today we're diving into the world of AI and how well robots can collaborate with humans on household tasks.
Uh-huh.
Specifically, we're looking at some fascinating research from Meta,
Yeah.
a paper that details a new benchmark that they've created called PARTNR.
It's very cool. Think of PARTNR as like a giant virtual test course. But, instead of hurdles and sand pits and things,
Yeah.
it's filled with everyday household objects and scenarios. So,
Mm.
it's really designed to push the boundaries of what robots can understand and accomplish in a realistic home setting.
Okay, interesting. So let's unpack this PARTNR thing a little bit. What makes it so unique compared to other tests out there?
Well, for one, it uses incredibly detailed simulated houses.
Okay.
60 of them to be exact.
Wow.
And each one is packed with over 5,800 different objects. It's designed to be the largest and most realistic simulation of its kind.
So we're not talking about robots bumping around like a plain white room with a few blocks. This is like a full-blown virtual home environment.
Absolutely. But what's really interesting is how the tasks are given to the AI.
Okay.
So instead of like pre-programmed instructions or simple commands, PARTNR uses natural language.
So, like, instead of telling the robot, like, move object A to location B, you could say, hey, can you tidy up the living room?
Exactly.
Right.
And that's a huge leap forward, right? We're talking about training AI to understand our intent, not just to follow, rigid commands. So they need to figure out what tidy up means, in the context of a cluttered living room, which objects belong, where, and how to navigate the space effectively.
That sounds incredibly complex. Can you give us a specific example of, like, one of these tasks and how it would play out in PARTNR?
Sure. So imagine a task as simple as clear all the dishes from the living room.
Okay.
Seems straightforward to us, but for a robot, this is a multi-step puzzle. It has to first identify, what constitutes a dish amidst all the other objects,
Yeah.
figure out where those dishes should go, and then actually navigate the room to get them there.
And I imagine if there is multiple living rooms in the simulation, the robot needs to figure out which one you're even talking about.
You got it. This seemingly simple task reveals just how much reasoning and planning goes on behind the scenes. It's not just about moving objects, it's about understanding the relationships between those objects, the layout of the house, and your overall goal as the human giving the instructions.
So how well are the robots actually doing with all this? Are we
Yeah.
all about to have robot butlers?
Not quite yet. The study found that humans could successfully complete over 90% of the tasks in PARTNR, but even the most advanced AI models only managed around 30% without being given extra information.
Wait, extra information, so they were getting like some hints along the way.
You could say that. Think of it as like having access to an answer key
Okay.
or knowing the location of every object beforehand. Without these cheats, their performance dropped significantly.
That's a pretty big gap. It makes you wonder what aspect of these tasks are still tripping up, like even the most sophisticated AI.
One key area is the ability to, anticipate and adapt. Humans are incredibly good at predicting what their partner will do next and adjusting their actions accordingly. We see this all the time in collaborative tasks, right?
Yeah.
AI, on the other hand, is still catching up in this department.
So it's not just about understanding instructions, it's about understanding how to work with a human, right?
Yes.
Like, if I'm clearing the table and the robot wants to grab a dish, it needs to, like, do so in a way that doesn't interrupt my flow or cause a collision.
Exactly. The research actually showed that when a human partnered with an AI-controlled robot, they were slower than if the human worked alone.
Really?
So that suggests that smooth collaboration is still a major hurdle for AI.
So even if a robot can technically do the dishes, it might not do it in a way that, like, feels natural or helpful for the human partner.
Right.
That's a fascinating insight. I bet that resonates with anyone who's ever felt frustrated trying to work alongside someone who's not quite on the same page.
Absolutely. The goal isn't just to have robots that can do things, it's to have robots that can do things with us in a way that makes the entire process easier and more efficient.
And it makes you think about the future of these robots, even beyond, household tasks. If AI can truly learn to collaborate effectively, the applications are limitless, right? Imagine working alongside AI in fields like healthcare or construction, or even creative endeavors.
Exactly. The potential is enormous. But before we get carried away with, the possibilities, let's dive deeper into some of the specific challenges that researchers are still trying to crack.
All right, let's get into it. I'm particularly curious about how researchers are trying to teach AI to handle those unpredictable real-world scenarios that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's one thing to program a robot to navigate, a perfectly predictable environment, but the real world is messy, full of surprises.
Yeah, I can only imagine the chaos a rogue house plant or an unexpected pile of laundry would wreak on a robot trying to follow its programming.
Hmm.
So how are researchers tackling this challenge of unpredictability?
One really exciting area is the use of something called reinforcement learning.
Okay.
It's kind of like training a dog. You reward the AI for making the right decisions and gently steer it away from the wrong ones.
So the AI learns through trial and error,
Hmm.
figuring out which actions lead to success in different scenarios.
Exactly. But instead of a dog treat, the reward is like a virtual pat on the head, a signal that it's on the right track. The more it interacts with the environment, the better it gets at handling those unexpected curveballs.
That makes sense. But wouldn't that require like a ton of training data? The real world throws a lot of weird stuff at you.
Yeah.
How can you possibly prepare for every scenario?
That's the beauty of this approach. We don't have to. Instead of pre-programming every possible outcome, we give the AI tools to learn and adapt on its own. It's about creating systems that can generalize their knowledge and apply it to new situations.
So it's not about memorizing the right answer for every situation. It's about learning how to think on its feet, so to speak.
Precisely. It's about equipping the AI with the ability to reason, to problem solve, and to adjust its strategy based on the information it gathers from its surroundings.
This all sounds very promising, but are there any limitations to this reinforcement learning approach?
One of the biggest challenges is what we call the reward function.
Okay.
Figuring out how to define success for the AI in a way that truly aligns with our, human goals.
Yeah.
That's a really tricky problem.
So you might inadvertently teach the AI to optimize for the wrong things. It's like giving your dog a treat for fetching your slippers, but accidentally rewarding it for, like, chewing up the furniture in the process.
Exactly. It's a delicate balancing act. Researchers are constantly refining these reward functions, trying to ensure that the AI is not only competent, but also aligned with our values and intentions.
This brings us back to that question of trust that we touched on earlier. It's one thing for a robot to be capable, but it's another thing entirely for us to feel comfortable inviting these machines into our homes and entrusting them with tasks that are important to us.
You're absolutely right. Trust is essential. And it's not something that can be programmed or forced. It needs to be earned. And that's why a lot of research is also focusing on the social and emotional intelligence of these AI systems.
So teaching robots to not just do things, but to do them in a way that feels safe and understandable and maybe even a little bit human.
Exactly. We're talking about robots that can read our facial expressions, understand our tone of voice, and respond to our emotions in a way that feels, natural and empathetic.
It's almost like we're talking about creating robot companions, not just robot helpers.
In a way, yes. And this is where the ethical considerations become even more crucial. We need to be very mindful of the potential implications of creating AI that can mimic human emotions and form social bonds.
It's a fascinating and complex area, but let's not lose sight of the practical applications here. Even if we're not quite ready for robot best friends, the potential for these robots to improve our lives in tangible ways is enormous.
Absolutely. Imagine a world where robots can assist the elderly with daily tasks, help people with disabilities live more independently, or even free up our time so we can focus on more, creative and fulfilling endeavors.
That's a future I think we can all get behind. But before we get too carried away with all the amazing things these robots could do, let's bring it back to the research and talk about what they can do right now. We mentioned earlier that even the most advanced AI models are still struggling with some of the challenges presented in PARTNR. Can you elaborate on that?
Sure. One area where AI is still falling short is what we call common sense reasoning. Humans are able to, intuitively grasp certain concepts about the world and how things work that AI systems still find very challenging.
So even if a robot can identify a dish and figure out where it goes, it might not understand that a dirty dish needs to be washed before it's put away.
Exactly. Or it might not realize that a fragile object needs to be handled with care, or that a hot stovetop is dangerous to touch. These are things that seem obvious to us, but they require a deep understanding of the physical world and the consequences of actions that AI systems are still, learning to grapple with.
That makes sense. It's like those funny videos you see online of robots trying to perform simple tasks and make hilariously absurd mistakes. It highlights just how much we take our own common sense for granted.
It really does. And it underscores the importance of continued research in this area, teaching AI to reason about the world in a way that's more akin to human intuition. That's one of the key challenges that researchers are working to overcome.
So while we might not have robot butlers serving us breakfast in bed just yet, it seems like we're making significant progress towards a future where AI can seamlessly integrate into our lives and assist us with a wide range of tasks.
Absolutely. The research being done in areas like reinforcement learning, social and emotional intelligence, and common sense reasoning is paving the way for, truly collaborative robots that can understand our needs, anticipate our actions, and work alongside us as partners rather than simply tools.
This is all incredibly exciting, but I imagine some listeners might be wondering, how long until this future becomes a reality? When can we expect to see these robots in our homes, helping us with our daily chores, and maybe even offering a bit of companionship along the way?
That's a great question and one that researchers are actively exploring. While we've made incredible strides in recent years, there's still much work to be done before we see truly collaborative robots becoming mainstream.
So we're not talking about next week or even next year. This is a long-term vision, right?
It is. But the progress we're seeing is encouraging, and I'm optimistic that we'll see significant advancements in the coming years.
Well, I, for one, am eagerly anticipating the day when I can delegate some of my more tedious chores to a helpful robot companion. But until then, I guess we'll just have to keep dreaming and following the incredible work being done by researchers around the world.
That's a great attitude to have. And remember, even though the robots themselves might not be in our homes just yet, the research being done today is already having a profound impact on other areas of our lives.
So even if we're not quite ready for robot butlers, the AI revolution is already well underway.
Exactly. And it's a revolution that's going to touch every aspect of our lives in the years to come.
This has been a truly fascinating exploration of the world of collaborative robots. We've covered a lot of ground, from the technical challenges of creating AI that can understand and interact with the real world, to the ethical considerations of integrating these machines into our lives.
And we've seen that while the challenges are complex and multifaceted, the potential rewards are enormous.
But before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to take a moment to acknowledge the incredible work being done by the researchers who are pushing the boundaries of what's possible with AI and robotics.
They're the unsung heroes of this technological revolution, and their dedication, creativity, and passion are truly inspiring.
And to our listeners, we encourage you to stay curious, stay engaged, and stay informed about the developments in this exciting field. The future of robotics is being shaped right now, and it's a future that we all have a stake in.
Well said. But for now, let's shift our focus to a particularly intriguing aspect of the research we've been discussing, the concept of task offloading. Even though the robots might not be able to perfectly collaborate with us yet, there's still a lot of potential for them to take over some of the more tedious and time-consuming tasks that we all face on a daily basis.
Now, that's something I think everyone can get behind. I'm all for anything that can free up more time for the things I actually enjoy doing. So let's dive into the specifics of task offloading and explore how robots might be able to lighten our load in the near future. So what specific tasks do you think robots are best suited for in the near term?
Well, think about tasks that are, highly structured and predictable.
Yeah.
Things like laundry folding, dishwashing, vacuuming, even basic meal prep, using pre-portioned ingredients. These are tasks that can be broken down into a series of clear steps.
Right.
And don't require a lot of improvisation or nuanced decision-making.
That makes sense. And those are also the tasks that I think most people find, the most time-consuming.
Yeah.
And frankly, a little bit boring. I can definitely see the appeal of having a robot take those off my plate.
Ah.
But what about those more complex tasks that require more than just following a set of instructions? Things like, organizing a cluttered room or planning a dinner party.
Those are definitely still areas where human ingenuity and creativity reign supreme. But even in those cases, AI can play a supporting role. Imagine a robot that can help you sort through a pile of clutter, suggesting which items to keep, donate, or discard based on your, past behavior and preferences. Or a robot that can help you generate a shopping list for your dinner party, based on your guest list and dietary restrictions.
So even if the robots aren't making all the decisions, they can still provide valuable assistance.
Yeah.
And make those tasks a lot less overwhelming.
Exactly. It's about finding that sweet spot where human intelligence and artificial intelligence can complement each other, creating a synergy that enhances our capabilities
Hmm.
and frees us to focus on the things that we truly enjoy and excel at.
This brings us back to that idea of human-robot collaboration that we've been exploring throughout this deep dive. Even if the robots aren't quite ready to be our equals, there's still a lot of potential for them to be valuable partners, working alongside us to achieve our goals and make our lives a little bit easier.
I completely agree. And as the research progresses, I think we'll see robots taking on an increasingly diverse range of tasks, from the mundane to the complex, always with the goal of enhancing our lives and expanding our possibilities.
This has been a truly eye-opening conversation. It's made me realize that the future of robotics is much more nuanced and multifaceted than I ever imagined. It's not just about creating machines that can do things for us, it's about creating systems that can work with us,
Yeah.
learn from us,
hmm
and ultimately help us to become, better versions of ourselves.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And it's a vision of the future that I find incredibly inspiring.
And to our listeners, we hope this deep dive has left you feeling informed, intrigued, and perhaps even a little bit excited about the potential of AI and robotics to transform our world.
Remember, the future is not something that simply happens to us. It's something we create together. So stay curious, stay engaged, and stay involved in the conversation about how we want to shape the world we live in.
Well said. And until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep into the fascinating world around us.